Welcome to the game. This is the show where we go play by play, analyzing the game of politics. Today, families and friends gather across the nation for Thanksgiving. We're going to dive into the conversations that likely will be front and center at your dinner table, starting with politics. The impact that it's having on our nation many times can create disagreement. Sometimes agreement, but sometimes that division among family and friends at that dinner table. Second, we're going to be looking at the fact that it can be a lonely time for many folks where they feel that the division is driving, again, them away from other individuals in their family. How can we actually walk away from the Thanksgiving table more united than when we arrived? We're also going to be looking at the difficulties that many individuals face at a moment where we're coming together to have gratitude, to be thankful. It can be difficult, sometimes through family loss or through economic hardships. And joining me today to discuss these topics, we have Marianne Rivedo. She's a mental health therapist. She's also a leader at my local church, VU Church. Marianne, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Eduardo Funes also here in studio. He is the host of Así No Era. Make sure to check out his podcast. He's also a local leader here at the church that I attend at VU Church. So very excited to have you both. Again, this is a very interesting topic. It's Thanksgiving Day. People are coming together. Again, family and friends. Many times we don't get to pick the conversations that happen at the dinner table. Sometimes it's el tío or la tía, the ones who are bringing up maybe politics. They're the ones who are bringing up the topics that sometimes are very difficult. I mean, let's acknowledge that I think this year, for many people, might have been a difficult one. We've seen immigration become front and center for many immigrant families or the sons and daughters of immigrants. It can be a very difficult topic. There's also the topic of crime. There's also the topic of economic hardships. Or there's also the fact that many people want to buy a house and the interest rate might not be there where they want it. But Marianne, I do want to start with you. When people are thinking about the dinner that they're going to have tonight, they might be driving right now to, to go meet their family. What kind of mindset should they have going into these family times? But again, that can be somewhat difficult because of disagreement or because of different opinions on different topics.
Sure. I mean, perspective, you're talking about mindset, right? So what is the end goal? Like, why am I doing this? What are we doing when we gather for Thanksgiving? And so keeping that at the forefront of your mind, regardless of the conversations that come up, it's more about, okay, we're here to give thanks, to have just gratitude at the forefront of my mind. I'm going to go be with my family that I don't get to be with this close that often. And my main thing is just being grateful that I get to be around the people that I love. So as long as we maintain that perspective, I think that it's going to be a lot easier to pull away from the things that divide us, which is difficult conversations.
Yeah, I think the more we prepare ahead of these conversations or ahead of these moments, I think in life in general, whatever we're about to go into, if it's an interview, if it's a conversation that's difficult, whatever it might be, I think preparation is a key aspect. So let's not allow let's just show up and let the conversation drive itself, but ground ourselves in what's there. Eduardo, when you think of a little bit of what Mariana said, and what are the values that we should anchor ourselves in? Because it's sometimes we're not the ones that are bringing up the disagreements. We're maybe the ones who have to be the peacemakers, but that takes a little bit of, I think, ahead of time saying, I'm going to anchor to these values that I believe in. What do you think are those values that we should hold on to going ahead of Thanksgiving?
Yeah, I think that when it comes to family, there's a lot to be thankful for. And sometimes we miss that because of our differences. And personally, I think I have experienced that in the past. I come from Venezuela, and as families, we had divided opinions, mostly in politics, right? And
wait, let me add something. So for Hispanic families, and a lot of our audience, not all of it, but many of them are Latinos.
Yes.
Not only do we have to deal with conversations about politics in the United States, right? Democrats, Republicans, get Trump, sí or no. But then you have the added fact, because I remember growing up, my families would talk about politics in Honduras. In 30 days, Honduras has an election. You both are from Venezuela or Venezuelan parents.
Yeah.
That's another place where politics is front and center now. So we have that added layer of not just American politics, but also politics back home. But yeah, definitely continue.
Yeah, 100%, man. And I think politics sometimes is a sensitive topic when it comes to families. And especially in times like this where you're trying to have a good time, try to focus in what matters, right? You probably haven't seen your family in a long time, and then you're getting together, but then you start talking about things and you bring up sensitive topics that can be divided, right? And personally, I had experienced that with my family, where we probably would come around the Christmas table, and then half of my family would support one of the sides and the other half would support the other side.
Yeah.
So we've seen probably the ugly part of it when it causes division, when it causes people to scream at each other, to talk in a probably not the best way to each other. So I remember that sometimes we had to make a rule within the family. It's like, okay, when we come to the table, we're not going to talk about politics. And I think it's not about avoiding the topic, but sometimes it's just probably focusing in what we should be focusing at when it comes to Thanksgiving table, right? What are we grateful for? I think there's more to be grateful about the person that you have in front of you than the differences that split you guys apart. So sometimes if you think about, okay, if I'm sharing the table with my cousin, I probably shared a lot of memories and experiences with them than probably an opinion on politics that would divide us, right? And I remember that we had to make this rule, no politics at the table. And I think sometimes those topics tend to dehumanize the person that you have in front of you, right? And start just critiquing their ideas and not value them for who they are. And I think around this topic, around this season of Thanksgiving, that could happen in a lot of families, right?
It's a lot of good points. I do remember when we do media training, when I used to work in Congress, we would say we criticize ideas, not people.
Yeah.
And I think many times individuals, that's what happens. I think it happens because we don't dig into the issues that we believe in. Many times in politics, people form ideas either through families or the neighborhoods they grew up in. And then when they have to defend some of these ideas, they aren't able to. So what they do is they start criticizing the person, right? Instead of saying, I don't agree with this idea because of X, Y, and Z reasons. They're saying like, oh, no, but you're stupid. Or, no, you're ignorant for not aligning yourself with me. So I think that's a key point. Let's criticize ideas. Hey, if you don't know how to defend your ideas, well, look into why you believe in these things. Look into data. Be prepared. Not saying that we should make Thanksgiving a debate. I'm just trying to draw the point in general. Let's criticize the ideas, not the individual. And I think also leading to one of your points on the individual and your relationship with them, be it the cousin, be it the uncle. How can you go in thinking like, hey, this is a family member. These are memories that I have growing up with that person. So let me not just focus on their politics or even on faith. Faith is another topic that sometimes comes up. Religion, right? There's different perspectives. There's, we're individuals of faith, but we have family members who haven't yet come to our same belief, come to Christ, and they might criticize how much time we spend at church, how much time we do serving, or sometimes the conversation of money comes up in these things.
Yeah.
Marianne, how can somebody who they do want to be very understanding of others, they want to welcome the opinion of others, but they also want to stand firm on what they believe in. They also want to be able to convey their opinion. What's the balance there of standing firm on what I believe in, but not to the point where like I have to convince the other person and I'm driving them away because I need to win them over to my side?
Yeah. I mean, you're not there to convince anybody to convert to anything. You're there to hang out and spend time with your family or with your friends or whoever you're gathering with. That's not the point. You can stand firm on your faith and people can recognize you by the way that they can acknowledge Jesus in you. You know, the way that you behave, the way that you talk to people, the kind of conversations that you engage in, your attitude, you know. It doesn't necessarily need to be because you're able to have a debate over scripture or over your faith. So remember why you're there, I think is really important. And you know who you're working with, you know, who knows your family better than you do? You know, if you know your uncle's coming in and he just, you know, he likes to go off on his tangents about whatever, whether it's politics, his faith, or whatever. Know when to walk away. Know when to say, oh my God, yeah, and then move it along.
Yeah.
You don't have to engage in every debate.
So but essentially you're talking about boundaries. There's an important part. So I mean, could you dig on that a little bit more when you think of either like emotional boundaries or just like maybe physical boundaries of where I'm going to position myself or who I'm not going to talk to? I mean, what kind of comes to mind in that space in general? How should we be thinking of boundaries when we think of these kind of events? Yeah,
boundaries is just a fancy word for know your limits. You know when you're going to engage in conversation, when you're not going to engage in conversation. Be able to recognize within yourself when you're getting riled up, when you're starting to feel some sort of way. If somebody's saying something that's just really just upsetting you, what are you going to do when that happens? Have a strategy. Okay, I'm going to walk away. I'm going to go use the restroom. I'm going to excuse myself. Oh my goodness, I forgot. I need to find my phone. I don't know, some random excuse. When people know what conversations you're going to be a part of and which ones you're not, because sometimes we have to know what our strengths are and what our weaknesses are. If I know that somebody starts talking about a certain thing and I just get really passionate about it, and it's hard for me to gauge and have a sense of control, and sometimes I can walk away from that conversation either offending another person or upsetting them, and I don't even notice. I need to recognize within myself that when that happens and know what I'm going to do and how to maneuver it. So if I'm going to avoid it, if I'm just going to walk away, like I think what you said with your family, we don't talk about politics at the table. That's a limit.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's a great one.
That's good. I think sometimes we would have to engage in certain conversations.
Sure.
And I think, as you mentioned, as people of faith, we can follow the example of Jesus, right? He often engaged in difficult conversations. That he didn't compromise truth, but he did it in love, right? So sometimes when we do it, we're trying to convince people, right? So we overpass love. We overpass how we have these conversations. And we start focusing in, I want to win you over my idea and what you should be doing and how you should be living, right? But I think that wasn't Jesus' way. I think he was full of truth, but also full of grace, right? And he would be patient with people. When he encountered the rich young ruler, they have differences. And he invited him, but then the rich young ruler decided to walk away when he invited him to do something that it was kind of crazy for him. He said, sell all your possessions and follow me. That's the thing you're missing, right? And he was sad, but Jesus in that moment, he didn't rebuke him. He didn't force them. He let him just walk away patiently. Probably who knows what happened with his life after, right? And sometimes that's probably the attitude that we should have with our families. If God has been patient with ourselves, he can be patient with our families. So we don't have to win them over in a conversation, but we can engage in love when we talk about something that is very passionate with us when it comes to faith, right?
Yeah, and I've come to believe that many times some of the biggest influences we can have on our family, on our friends, and just the people around us is how we carry ourselves, how we decide to engage, knowing our limits, right? Saying, hey, there's a level of maturity that this person has when they're engaging in conversation. There's a level of love that they bring and grace that they bring, forgiveness. They present their ideas firmly, right? Because I do believe like we should stand on our belief. But at the same time, they don't take it over the top, right? They don't either raise their voice or they don't allow emotions to take over. Because I do think there is a healthy way, right? One thing that Charlie Kirk, who was murdered earlier this year, talked about that we should engage in conversations. I think one of his principles, like when we stop having conversations, that's when we almost allow violence to come in. So I think we should have conversations, right? Look, I leave it up to every family to decide if Thanksgiving is the place to do that. That's not what I'm saying, right? You can decide to not have politics at the table, and you know, maybe even not Black Friday. Let's fight over prices on Black Friday. But these conversations do come up. So I think a lot of what we're talking about today is even applicable beyond Thanksgiving. Let's walk in love. Let's walk in grace. Let's be examples, right? I think even in politics, right? When we look at what are those fundamental principles that we believe in, how do we apply those through example, not just because we raised our voice more than the other person. But I do want to move on to our next topic where we look at gratitude in difficult seasons. Again, this has been a year that for some individuals has been difficult for various reasons. Again, either because they're not where they think they want to be. Possibly, again, many people dealing with loss in their families. Unfortunately, there's going to be that empty chair where maybe grandma or grandpa was at, and that can be very difficult for individuals going through that. But Eduardo, I do want to continue with you. When you think of applying gratitude even in hard seasons, right? It might seem like those things don't go together. In hard seasons, it might seem that complaining might be the easiest way, or pointing to those who are at fault or trying to find fault in others might be the easiest thing. But when you think of hard seasons and the attitudes that we should have, especially during Thanksgiving, what are those either values or sentiments that come to mind?
Yeah, I think it's natural for us as humans to go to the negative, right? What are we lacking? What we don't have? What other people are doing to me? But I think gratitude has also the power to change your perspective. It probably won't change the environment, but it would change your perspective, right? You would start looking about things that you are grateful for, that you have, that God has done, instead of looking at the things that you're lacking that you don't have. And it kind of reminded me of a story. I was reading the Bible the other day, and in the book of Philippians, I think it is, Paul starts writing to, it's a letter that he's writing to one of the churches there. And he starts the letter by saying, every time I think of you, I give thanks to God. And just right there, it seems so, probably you can underestimate what he's writing, but he's writing from a position where he's in jail, right? And how he's starting his letter is with gratitude. And I think for someone that is in jail, you would think you would have a lot of things to complain about. And I think the jails back there wasn't as we have it today with AC, 3 meals. It's probably a different place to be.
Yeah.
And I think what gratitude does is that it helps you lift your eyes. And instead of looking on your own situation, you can look unto others and look on what God is doing around you. And that 100% would change your mindset. It won't change your circumstances. He was still in jail, but it would change how you think or how you approach this circumstances.
Yeah, I think there's, and not that I'm an expert on it, but I think there's a lot of psychology behind how we think will impact our emotions. I've even heard our body language, right? They talk about before job interview, you should, sort of put yourself in the Superman position and sort of build that confidence within you. I think the same applies to gratitude, right? You can say, I'm going to choose to look at those things that I should be grateful. Marianne, I did want to, go ahead.
No, and I love that you're saying that, you're mentioning the word choose. Gratitude is a choice. You do not have to wait to feel grateful in order to be grateful. I think sometimes we forget because we're so caught up in the way that we feel and in our circumstance that we're like, oh, it seems impossible to be grateful during this time. It feels impossible to be grateful during a time of mourning, during a time of loss. But that's actually not true. We get to choose the direction where we take our thoughts and the direction of our perspective. So I love that you mentioned that.
Yeah, that's very important. And look, I think we focused a little bit on, which is a reality. Again, some of the negative aspects during the season in the sense of, again, we talked about loss and hardships, but there's a lot that we can look at, I think in our personal lives, but then also just the opportunity of being in this country. Many of us, again, either immigrants or sons and daughters of immigrants, it continues to be that land of opportunity. Doesn't mean that it's easy. Doesn't mean that it's given to you, but it means that the sweat of your brow counts towards something. You can try to scale your purpose. You can try to scale a business and do it at a high level because the United States does offer those opportunities. Again, not a perfect nation, but a nation where I think many people choose to come to and to immigrate. So there is, again, on that sort of that political side, things that we can be thankful. Marianne, I did want to ask you a little bit, when we think some of the stats that I saw about the holidays, Thanksgiving, New Year's, and Christmas, it is a very difficult season for some people who are experiencing loneliness. When we think of mental health, there's also, I saw some stats, especially around Christmas, that the suicide rate sometimes tends to peak a little bit. Again, folks who don't have family members for different reasons or can't travel to see family members. When you think of the topic of mental health and how do we support family members, or how are we even, for individuals that we don't know are going through something, how do we try to just be there for individuals around us in general?
Oh my gosh, yeah. The holidays are honestly a time where a lot of people are really sad. A lot of people are really isolated and lonely because it's funny, we're kind of focused on this theme of family and gathering, but what happens to the people that, you're right, like don't have family and or are going through loss or just their circumstances are different. If you know anybody in that position, be a friend. Kindness, love, just your presence is a big deal. If you know someone who doesn't have family in town, hey, why don't you extend an invite them, give them a sense of family, give them a sense of friendship, and I guess like fill the gap, if they're isolated, if you know a person is alone, like be there for that person in any way that you can. I'm not saying go coop up with them in their apartment and just be there for them 24/7, but reach out, shoot a text, call somebody, extend an invite. I think it goes a long way.
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity during these times to to create a level of awareness of, or try to have awareness of what others might be going through, right? Awareness of like, hey, where are my blessings and where can I also share what I've been given. And what I've been given might just be a warm Thanksgiving meal
Yeah.
that I
Yeah.
invite someone over to. What I have might just be a little bit of conversation, right? Can I
Yeah.
reach out and
Right.
check on you? Maybe you're working that day and you can't come over for Thanksgiving, but I want to check up on you. I want to see how you're doing, right? I want to applaud
Yeah.
you for working hard for your family or for your future.
I think communities of faith, they play a big part in that.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, here in Miami, we have a lot of people that are not from here. A lot of people that come probably from work or for different projects, and they're isolated from their families, right? And I think communities of faith actually surrounded with that community, with that family that you don't have, where you're working, where you're traveling. And I think they play a big part. We just witnessed last week, we did a whole event with our church, and we supported communities, giving them a meal for Thanksgiving. I know that sometimes financial struggle can get in the way. Like you're thinking, oh man, Thanksgiving is coming, and you're not thinking I'm going to be celebrating, but I'm going to be struggling even to have a proper dinner with my family, right?
Yeah.
And communities of faith give you the opportunity to get connected, to probably resource you when you're in your more times of needs. But also when you think about the people around you, you have a family that it's probably the closest family you have away from your family, right? And it gives you a place in their table. Or probably I have friends that are gonna be doing like a whole Friendsgiving for Thanksgiving because they're all of them away from their family. So it's a way of connecting with people with like-minded, with the same mission, same purpose, and it just creates a bond. And it gives you that family that you probably don't have close to you.
Yeah, we did a segment probably about a month ago. There was a study that showed that actually younger generations and men in younger generations specifically, but women as well, are going to church. A part of it has been a little bit of that lonely epidemic that we're seeing in the United States. The study also looked at the United Kingdom, and it's just saying that many people are going to church for community. That was the number one. I'm not sure if it was the number one thing, but it was one of the top reasons why they were trying to go to church. I think because of social media and just in general how we have moved a lot of our relationships to digital platforms, right? Where we used to maybe pick up the phone or we would see people in the neighborhood riding our bikes when we were kids. Now it's PlayStation. Right now you're keeping in touch through Instagram and through Facebook. I'm not saying these things are wrong. I use them many times to stay in touch with friends who are elsewhere, but I think we've just created sort of digital relationships and people are looking to go outside of that, right? Even when you look at dating, people are now looking into apps or websites. And again, not saying those things are wrong, but I think there's also a sense from individuals who want to have that human touch, that human interaction. And churches are that place where people have been looking for communities. At our church, we do say you can belong before you believe. And I think most churches hold that. So I would say to our audience, if they are looking a place to get plugged in, a place where they want to meet with individuals where they can talk life, talk about the future, talk about faith, talk about sometimes things that are very difficult, ask for prayer. I do think churches are a real good place to do that. Again, it's that sense of community where people can really get plugged into that.
We are relational beings. You know, we need that connection. I know from probably the psychology standpoint, you can talk about what isolation causes to people, right? But we are meant to be connected with each other. We are meant to have community with each other. We didn't get here alone, and we're always gonna need people for anything that we do. So I think faith communities actually play a big part on that.
Yeah, I mean, we were born out of relationship into the world. So by default, we need relationships. We need people around us. I think the worst thing that you can do is isolate because you're left with your own thoughts, and not all of your thoughts are great. And so if you don't have the discipline to be able to recognize, okay, these are thoughts that are taking me in a direction where I don't want to go, you're going to find yourself there. And it's just going to get worse.
Yeah, again, I think these principles even go beyond just Thanksgiving. When I think, when you were saying about my thoughts, I'm thinking of like people who are trying to start a business, people who are trying to launch a podcast, who are trying to launch a new career. I've always been a big believer that I think we should kind of look at successful businesses and see what they've done. And almost every successful business has a board of advisors, right? And I think individuals should be doing the same thing, right? If you're going to do a shift in your life, who are those board of advisors in your life, right? Who's the person who maybe knows about careers, that knows about entrepreneurship, that's been down those paths, and they've been very successful, and they can tell you about success, or maybe they failed and they can tell you about the traps to avoid. Same thing in relationships, right? If you're single, who's someone who is in a relationship that can tell you a little bit about what's ahead? Who's someone who's already married that can tell you a little bit about what's ahead? Who's that person that can speak to you about faith? So I think a challenge for our listeners and our viewers would be, who are those board of advisors that when I have difficult moments that I can go to, that can be mentors in my life and speak wisdom and understanding and challenge me and let me know maybe where I'm a little bit wrong. But I do think that's a good segue into our last topic, when we're going to try to explore how can we leave Thanksgiving, and I'll just say conversations in general, more united than when we arrived, right? So Marianne, let's say these conversations at Thanksgiving don't maybe go the direction that we want. Again, politics can be one of disagreement, life in general. What do you think are the steps that folks should take maybe after the conversation? It escalated. You're not liking your cousin as much anymore, but you know that's your cousin. You're going to see him at the birthday party. You're going to see him at Christmas. What should be done either the same day, or should we wait? Should we look at the next week? But what should be done so we try to either repair that relationship or make sure that we don't walk away with that tense?
I mean, I'm trying to think, like, be good at apologizing. Go up and say, hey, I love you so much. I'm sorry. That conversation got completely carried away. I got carried away. Be able to recognize and acknowledge your part to play. It's not relationships in all of them. It's a two-way street. You can't put all the blame on one person. So you always have a part to play. You can always recognize and take responsibility for that and acknowledge that to the other person. You can also change the mood by making it a little bit more lighthearted. Why don't you tell a joke or share something funny that you saw, whether that was in a movie, online, or whatever. Share a memory. Remember the things, remember the good times. I know people love to sit around and talk about the things that you enjoyed in your past, the moments that you shared together. So lean into that, or play a game. You know, in the moment when you're there, like, hey, we need a distraction. We need to lighten the mood. Let's play a game.
I think that's spot on, because I think if you don't have, I've talked about this concept before, there are things that we need to remove from our life, but we need to replace them with things. Because when you remove things, right, if it's a mindset, if it's a certain relationship or whatever you remove, if you don't replace it with something healthy, the likelihood of it coming back could appear. So I do think as folks, I think, are either driving to Thanksgiving dinner or just in life in general, think of like, okay, I don't want to lean into these type of conversations. So what are the conversations that I can lean into, right? Or what are the activities that I can do? So preparing those games. I like that you talked about apologizing. I think many times in life, we're quickly to point at where the other individual we believe is wrong or what they did wrong, but not recognizing and not having self-awareness of what we did wrong or where we need to apologize or how we might be hurting the other individual is very important. The other side of apologizing is, I think, forgiveness. Eduardo, when you think, and Eduardo, one of the things I know you lead at church is soul care, and one of the principles you got talk about is forgiveness. What role does forgiveness play? Again, not just at Thanksgiving, but just in general in life when you think about relationships.
Yeah, I think that forgiveness is something that is very countercultural, right? Because we're quick to just think that we're right all the time and to point at people's mistakes, right? So sometimes we don't even know how to forgive, and we don't even know how to repent about something that we did. So I think when it comes to family, she was talking about apologizing, and I think actually people would see it as a weakness to admit that you were wrong about something, but I think it shows strength and character. And I think we need more of that in this generation. I think we need more of that in our families. And I think we can show others what we believe and how our faith builds our life in the way that we conduct ourselves with our family. And even just going through that hard route, getting your out of your comfort zone and saying, hey, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I hurt you. I'm sorry that I said this. And I think that plays even a bigger part in the bonds that you can create with your family. And I think forgiveness is one of the key things, right? When we're engaging in those conversations that might hurt each other, if someone is acknowledging their mistakes, just to understand that they're human, right? And they can make mistakes too, and we're able to forgive them. That's the way we live. When we understand in our faith what we've been forgiven from, it's impossible not to extend that same mercy to other people, right? And mostly to our families. I know that with our families, it's kind of hard because these are the individuals that are closer to us, but usually it's the ones that can hurt us the most, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes those wounds, they feel a little harder than probably what a friend can do or someone else in the street that you barely know, right? But this is where we need to practice that. And I think when it comes to forgiveness, when we actually engage in that practice, in that principle, we're able to release a burden off of our shoulders. Sometimes we think that if we hold something against someone else, we're making them suffer. But when it comes to forgiveness, actually, when we extend that forgiveness, we are the ones that are being released from bitterness, from that attitude that keeps us all the time, probably in a conduct that we're mad, that we're sad, that we are stressed, right? So when we practice it is when we see the difference in that.
Yeah, that's a very important message. I do, before we finalize the show, I do want to give each of you an opportunity to give like an encouraging message to our audience, because something that I think of is that I think the holidays also can be a moment of reconciliation. It can be that moment where we haven't talked to a family member for a while and we just kind of decide, you know what, it's the holidays, we got that warm apple pie coming in, and like I just want to extend the hand and tell that family member that I forgive them, or tell them that I love them, that maybe that's something that they haven't done for a while. So again, want to give you guys that chance, because I do want to end on a positive note. And I do think the holidays, as difficult as they can be, I think if we, again, approach it with the right attitude, we bring in the right perspective, we allow a lot of the principles that we talked about here, about everything from forgiveness to self-awareness to knowing our limits. I think if we apply these things, right, we don't have to be victims of our circumstances. Granted, they can be very difficult. I want to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
But I think we can also be empowered to take steps towards trying to change them, to trying to be the change that we want to see in the world, as Gandhi said. So, Marianne, I do want to start with you. What would you think would be that encouraging message to individuals?
I mean, I think what comes to mind is stay grateful, choose gratitude. You know, life is it just goes by so quick, you know, and you want to make sure that you're being present and taking in all the people that you have now. You know, time is going to continue to go on. You're going to continue to grow, and it's not always going to look like this. So stay grateful and learn to cherish what you have now and be content.
Yeah, that's powerful. Eduardo?
That's great. I love what she said. And you mentioned that life is short, right? That life happens very fast. And it just remind me of a verse that says, Lord, help me to count my days so I can grow in wisdom.
Right.
Sometimes when we realize that our life, it's just but a minute, why we should waste it in being sad or bitter against the people that we love, right? So when we recognize we have a limited time on earth and it's going to be flying by, we're able to understand what it's most valuable, the time that we have, especially the time around them. If you would ask anyone that it's on their deathbed, the things that they regret is not the businesses that they start or the things that they didn't do for their company. It's usually the time that they didn't spend with their family and their loved ones. So I think when we actually think about that, it makes us appreciate more the times that we're spending together.
Yeah, very much so. Eduardo, Marianne, thank you guys for joining us on the show today. And thank you to our audience again for tuning in. This has been The Game, the show where we go play by play, analyzing the game of politics.